Yeah, it should be like unicorns and donkeys.
That's the
There we
one.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. I am a little obsessed with unicorns, I will admit.
That came across when I saw the slides.
Is that anything to do with your theatre, or is it just in general?
I don't know. They're just. I have a kid, so like they,
Yeah.
they like, like
That
My
helps.
Little Pony and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've got two girls myself, so I'm sure they would like this presentation. Not usually.
There's a lot of love for the unicorns in the chat, which is nice.
Yes, so there are over 100 unicorns in this presentation. So I've,
just as well then.
so we can start now. Let me just kick off the recording feature so that I have it. Just a moment. If I can figure out how to do that.
Okay. On the left hand side, I think it's a little up arrow that says, "Oh, that's under more." I think it is.
Do you see? Are you able to do that?
Yeah, I've already started. Yeah, all good.
Are you recording now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining me for joining us today for this topic. It's kind of, everyone talks about quality content and all this stuff, but I wanted to kind of see if we could push a little harder on that and kind of define what's your unicorn content for your donkey content. And I'm joined by our friends Daniel and Matthew at Quuu. So thanks for hosting, or thanks for putting this on.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us as well.
Did you want to like introduce yourselves or talk a little bit about your companies?
Yeah, sure. I'm Daniel. I'm the CEO of Quuu. We provide hand-curated content to help your social media efforts. This is Matthew, my co-founder and CEO of Quuu. We've been working with Quuu now for just over 2 years. We've grown to a team of around 10 now, and we hope to grow even further in the next couple of years. But big things on the horizon.
Awesome. And my name's Larry. This is Jason O'Hare on the screen, but that's just the guy's login that I'm using to conserving logins or something. Okay, exciting agenda for us today. Basically how it's going to work is I'm just going to walk through some content, and Matthew and Daniel, we're going to just kind of get your reactions and questions as we go live. Okay, just making it a discussion. As build, it's a discussion on donkeys and unicorns. I have kind of some theories about unicorns and how they pertain to marketing. I want to talk a little bit about the differences between donkeys and unicorns, as well as the donkey and unicorn detection technologies. We're going to introduce some new concepts around unicorn alerting and unicorn baby creation, and then finally we'll end the hour with some hacks for how to promote unicorns on Facebook and social media, etc. So before jumping into all the hacks, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Larry. I'm, as I said earlier, obsessed with unicorns. I live in Harvard Square in Cambridge. It's a really famous area where Facebook was founded. It's where Microsoft was founded. It's also where I started WordStream 10 years ago out of a bakery called Panera Bread because of the free Wi-Fi and unlimited Diet Coke refills. The company is, almost like 300 or 400 people now, managing $1 billion of ad spend for tens of thousands of people. So that was a pretty big company. And I just started a new one about 6 or 7 months ago, in the bot space. So I'm building chat bots, and that's like this ability to talk to your customers using Facebook Messenger, but without having to actually type stuff. So like a robot will kind of be trained to answer questions and take orders, basically. And the last thing I'll just say about myself is I have a 3-year-old kid, Julian. You can follow him on hashtag PPC Kid, and he really loves unicorns too. All right. enough about me. Back to our story, part one, talking about my crazy unicorn theory of marketing. And basically, the bad news is about 98% of the content that you're creating are actually going nowhere. And I think I know why that is. I'm not being critical of you guys. It's actually, if I look at my own content, in 2016, I created 300 pieces of content on my blog. 8 of them did really well. That's like 2.6%. The remaining 292 went nowhere. Okay, so like what the heck is going on here? And I think what's happening here is a couple things. One is when I ask people like what's wrong, people just give me these dumb platitudes about, oh, Larry, you're just going to focus on the quality. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of unsatisfying because what exactly is that quality? And people make different arguments for certain attributes of quality content, like, oh, you should do longer form content or shorter form content, or you need like more images or more videos, or like as if you could just check the box on certain things and then suddenly it becomes quality. And basically my problem with that definition or that kind of advice is that all of my content actually checked the boxes on 1,200 words and 3 images, etc. And yet still most of them went nowhere. You see what I'm saying? So basically I think there's another answer to this. It's not just it's not necessarily that I'm not making quality stuff, like quote unquote quality. I think the algorithms are changing. So the way that Google and Facebook are distributing traffic, which is like probably like 50, 60, 70% of your site traffic, that they are kind of rewarding unicorns and punishing donkeys. And basically what I want to show you here is like, I'm a columnist for Inc. magazine. And so like they tell me like what were the top posts of the month. So if I go back to August of 2015, that's the green line. They were kind of similar in performance. But if I look at the top 10 articles for 2016, it's like, it's starting to get a little bit more, what is it, exponential. And then if you look at just a few months ago, August 2017, the top 2 performing articles got more traffic than the numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 combined. And so my take of this is like, it's not just us, it's like the algorithms for Facebook and Google are actually shifting to disproportionately reward a lot of traffic and exposure to like just a small number of articles, making content marketing increasingly winner take all. And if this is the case, I think what we need to do is kind of adjust our content and social strategies. It's not just about the traffic, but also the sharing. So for social media, Facebook, it's like, in 2016 or 2015, the number of shares for the different articles was pretty similar. But then in 2016, it's like the top 2 articles on Inc. magazine got more shares than everything else there. So what I'm calling unicorn marketing is just kind of a strategic realignment of defining quality, this nebulous quality attribute to be more in line with how the algorithms of Facebook and Google kind of determine quality. Because if we can just kind of check the box in terms of those algorithms, then we should get more exposure for the content that we're creating. Daniel or Matthew, any thoughts or comments so far?
Yeah. So do based on the fact that if an article starts getting more shares, there's more likely that it will go unicorn.
Right. It's winner take all, basically.
Yeah. Okay. No, nothing else.
Do you have like a certain threshold where you start to see sort of like traction within the first, say, 24, 48 hours, and that's the point when this is gonna really like take hold and work for me? I should start like putting more focus on this particular piece?
You got it. So like it happens immediately. Like within like 200 or 300 views on Facebook, you can kind of determine like whether or not this is a winner or a loser. So let's talk a little bit about that in more detail here. I've been kind of throwing around these words donkeys and unicorns, but as a metaphor. So I mean, I have nothing against donkeys in real life, but just they're hardworking and everything. But just as a metaphor, there's a lot of donkeys, and they're kind of unremarkable, and there's very few unicorns. These are kind of rare and special creatures. And so what's the difference in this metaphor? The difference between a donkey and unicorn is a relative distinction as well as a cross-channel distinction. So let me explain what I mean by relative and cross-channel. Relative just means that the difference between a donkey and a unicorn isn't an absolute number cutoff. So this is like 129 status updates to my Facebook page, and most of them are donkeys, like meaning like 20 of the, most of the post updates to the Facebook page have click-through rates of between 0 and 1%, or 1 and 2%, and 2 and 3%. You see what I'm saying? But there's these outliers, like 3 status updates were crazy, really hot, topics that had 10 or 11, 12% click-through rates. So what I'm telling you here is that the differentiation between a donkey and unicorn isn't like, oh, if you get 5% click-through rate, well, then you're a unicorn. A unicorn is the ones that are the outliers, kind of the top 3% of your stuff that typically does 3, 4, or 5 times more engaging than the average. Okay, so this is a cross-channel phenomenon. It's not just in social that we see this. We see this in blogging, where like 10% of the stories typically generate 50, 60, 70% of the traffic. And so one of the things that I want to make sure that we're on the same page here is I'm not talking about viral hits here, okay? Because sometimes when I talk about my strategies, they say like, oh, you think I'm going to create the next Gangnam Style, and like that's a suicide mission, because like the odds of winning that is like 1 in a gazillion, right? It's got like a 2 billion views or something like that. So what I'm saying is just focus on your top 3%. So like, because the definition of unicorn is relative, that means that everyone has a unicorn. It's just your top 3% of your stuff. No matter how crappy your social content is or your content is, there's always going to be like 2 or 3% of it that does less crappy than all the rest. You see what I'm saying? And so all I'm saying is, everyone has these unicorns. If you look through your blog posts, if you look through your social stuff, you'll find them. And the way that we find them, I think, what I'm proposing here is to look at the click-through rates, because the click-through rates are a really interesting way of telling of whether or not people are engaging with the content or not. And so if you think about the different channels, like, AdWords, like paid advertising, like that's always been about user engagement. So quality score is sort of normalized click-through rates. The higher the click-through rates of your ads, the less you pay. The lower the click-through rates of your ads, you get these huge penalties. Twitter and Facebook ads kind of copied that idea. They have these relevancy scores, and basically, if you're promoting posts with 1% click-through rates, well, then that'll be a $2 or $3 click. But if you can raise those click-through rates to 7, 20, 30, or 60%, that cost per click will fall to like 8 cents, 3 cents, 2 cents, or even a penny or less. Click-through rates have a big deal in organic search. Organic search, it used to be all about links to your site, but they're more and more they're taking into consideration click-through rates. I can tell you why I know this. It's because I've done experiments kind of tracking thousands of keywords over time, and what Google is doing is they're kind of reordering the search results page so that the higher than average click-through rate listings are kind of floating to the top of the page, whereas the crappy low click-through rate content is falling to the bottom of the page. And then it's the same thing with the newsfeed algorithm in social. Every time you're seeing something in the feed, Facebook is actually auditioning that content to see if this is something you're interested in. If you engage with it, like place a comment or something like this, you're more likely to see this stuff in the future. If not, they're gonna show something else. And so even in other channels like email marketing, like obviously you want to have high click-through rates because that means people are opening your email and consuming that content. But there's these new algorithmic filters that like the clutter box in Outlook and the promotions tab in Gmail. The way those work are based on click-through rates. I know this is the case because all these things that I've opted into, including my own internal company like bug reports from the engineering team, like sometimes I just never read them, and then they just end up in the clutter box, even though this is like an internal thing. It's just because I don't open the things, and it's not even just about driving traffic to your site. The conversion rates are very sensitive to click-through rates too. So what we found is that if you can make people excited about opening your emails, or make them excited about clicking on your social ads or your social posts, that higher click-through rate means they're more excited, and that excitement tends to carry through to like a purchase or a lead form sign up, like once they get to your site. So basically, the point I'm trying to make here is that when it comes to like the top 3% of your content, the unicorns, like what is it that they have in common? what I'm finding is it's not about format of like 1,200 words or 800 words or 3 images. It has less to do about formatting it in a checklist. It has more to do with like that they've proven themselves to have high user engagement when shared in search or social or an ad format. And what is then happening is the reason why these work so well is because all of those different marketing channels employ machine learning enabled systems which notice that people are engaging with this thing like crazy and then are kind of giving dramatically more exposure to that piece of content in either social newsfeed or the ads platform or the Google search organic search results page, et cetera, et cetera. So any questions with any questions so far or thoughts, Daniel or Matthew?
I noticed that there was a question on the chat from William. He said, does bounce rate, or is bounce rate taken into account with click-through ratings, or in terms of?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bounce rate just validates the click-through rates. So all of these things like Facebook and Google, I mean, if you have like a post saying like free kittens, sure, like a lot of people are going to click on that thing, but like if there's no free kittens to be had, then they're going to just bounce right back. So so I think you can't really measure click-through rates without having some kind of a check installed. And so what we find Google and Facebook are doing is they're also looking at bounce rates.
Okay.
Nice. So they are relevant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So any other thoughts or questions, guys? So like for you guys?
No, it's totally clear.
So if you're with me, there's these donkeys and unicorns, and I want to talk a little about donkey and unicorn detection technologies. Like, how do we discern donkeys and unicorns, which is sort of the topic of today's webinar. And the problem is we're really bad as marketers of figuring this out. 9 out of 10 of us on this call today suffer from something called a donkey denial syndrome. So that's where, like, you think that the idea of the campaign that you just created is so hot, but it's you're sure it's a unicorn, but it's maybe it's something else like a rhinoceros or a triceratops or a mosquito or some other creature they thought was a unicorn, but was actually something else, unfortunately, because of the donkey denial syndrome. It just means we like to believe our own hype, and so. To combat the scourge of donkey delusional syndrome, I've created a donkey detector, and this is a really easy thing to use. All you do, it's for kind of determining user engagement rates. It's a bit of a pyramid scheme. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take kind of the subjective out of the equation, and we're just going to produce an addition a lot of campaigns. So they could be social posts, they could be email campaigns, they could be ad campaigns, they could be blog posts. You have to produce a lot of them, like for a particular channel. You then audition them, okay? You then see which ones have the high engagement rates, like which ones are being clicked on and which is generating the most traffic, etc. You then have to kill the donkeys. So the donkeys are those unremarkable 97%. What I'm going to kill them is just stop wasting time on them. Like if you send out an email to like 1,000 people and the open rate is 5%, like a lot of marketing people say, well, maybe if we send it out to another 100,000 people, it'll do better. I'm like, guys, if it didn't do well in the first 1,000, it's not going to do any different if you send it to 1,000 more people. You know what I mean? So just kill the donkeys, except for it's to find kind of those outliers and then the unicorns and sound the unicorn alert. And any questions so far?
What does it sound?
I was just going to ask. Sorry, go ahead.
So what does it sound like?
Oh well, it's kind of like the bat sign. You install
a light behind you.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to ask, in terms of engagement rate, you were saying sort of like once you've auditioned your various posts and you look at the engagement rate, you're looking at sort of click-throughs, like clicks, basically. What other metrics would you consider to be most relevant in terms of like measuring its engagement? Like, is there anything else that you would look at?
It's channel specific. So pick a channel. Email marketing, it's open rates. Blogging, it's going to be traffic. And comments, maybe comments to your blog. Social posts, it's going to be the post engagement rates. In Facebook ads, it's going to be the relevancy scores. So every channel has kind of a indicator of engagement, and what you're trying to do is just find the ones with the highest score for that channel. So So in terms of what's a good engagement rate, like we talked about this a little earlier, is it 1%? Is it 3%? The difference between these high engagement unicorns and these low engagement donkeys, it's a relative calculation. Remember, so like these are all my emails that I did for the quarter. You can kind of stack rank them, and some of them are donkeys with like 12% open rates, but some of them are really amazing, like 46%. Like can we connect on LinkedIn or something like that? So like what it's telling me is like that's a much more compelling offer, and so like maybe we should try to do more stuff around that kind of those types of things. Again, it's cross-channel. Like this literally impacts every channel because every channel is subject to the same systems. But like if you think about like conversion rate optimization, like the school of thought of like how to optimize your offers, the average offer on the internet converts around 2.35%. I know this because I have like $1 billion of ad spend, from tens of thousands of clients. The top 25% of offers converts at 5.31%. But if you can get an offer that's like converting in the top 10% of offers, then you're going to have an 11.45% conversion rate or higher. And so, it's not really necessary to have like a gazillion, ebook downloads. All you really need is one interesting offer, and then you should kind of kill off the donkeys that are just kind of, they're not really doing anything for you.
Sorry, just to interrupt that there. So, are you to find the unicorn in that scenario, like an ebook scenario? Would you run various tests and then narrow yourself into that, or detect the unicorn?
Yeah, try like 100 different offers, and then eliminate what people make the mistake of is they keep running the donkey,
in the hope that it will become good.
Yeah.
Eliminate the 99
Are we back?
Can you still hear me? It's saying the connection's a bit. Yeah,
yeah,
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You're fine.
Okay, so the unicorn marketing power law just says that most of the value comes from very little bit of the effort, and that's always been true, but it's becoming more and more leveraged. So like even less and less effort is responsible for most of the bounty. And so, like I was saying before, we're focusing on the unicorns, the top 3%. Those are the ones that we're going to make our stand on because they do better in all the channels, which is kind of responsible for all the growth. And any questions so far?
No, not so far.
Okay, so part 4, we're talking about the unicorn alert and making unicorn babies. So as you had asked earlier about what does the unicorn alert look like, that's kind of a dramatic visualization of the technology. It's very high-tech stuff. I just copied it from Batman. Okay, remember how I was saying like there was 8 campaigns that did well in 2016 and then 292 that did awful? This was actually one of my unicorns. It was actually a pretty ridiculous article. It was just a listicle. Okay, it said 5 big changes coming to AdWords, everything you need to know. And like I posted this thing and it went crazy. It was like tens of thousands of shares on social. It got 100,000 views on my blog, which is bonkers because my typical blog post maybe gets like 1,000 views. So like this is like 100 times better. And it got like 33 comments. So like it was pretty apparent like right away that there's something special about this topic. Like people are engaging about it like crazy. And so one of the worst things that you can do is like when you have such great success is to like look around at your marketing team and say, congratulations everyone, we got this unicorn, what should we do next? And you look at the calendar and it's like, oh well, it's February, so we need to do something Olympic themed or something, you know what I mean? Like we just we have this success and we just go back onto the content treadmill where it's like there's all this scheduled crap of stuff that we need to do because it's February. What you should actually do is you should actually jump off of that content treadmill and sound the unicorn alert. The unicorn alert and make unicorn babies. So what I'm talking about here is a couple examples. Unicorn baby number 1. This is a contributed article on the on the exact same topic. There's like, I just rewrote it as like slightly different word choices, okay? And I published on Search Engine Journal, and this was, 12,100 reads. Their typical story does 500 reads, so this is 24 times more than average. It got 2,300 shares. Their typical share count is like, 200 or 300, so this is 10 times more shares than usual. I knew this was going to be a unicorn because if it worked on my blog, well, it's a catchy idea, so it'll work elsewhere. It follows. Another example of a baby unicorn is a follow-up story. That's where you just kind of cover the substance of that article in greater depth. So there were 5 new features that were being introduced to AdWords. So I just created an in-depth dive of the 5 different features and created each one as its own separate post. And here's like one for expanded text ads, and every one of these unicorn babies actually generated 100,000 views last year because they're kind of really closely related to the same unicorn. They're just offspring of a unicorn. This is something I call unicorn infographification and videofication. So obviously, we love videos and we love infographics. You know what I love about videos and infographics? I love when they do really well. But what I really find as a bummer is when I spend all this time and energy on creating a video or an infographic and it goes nowhere, because you're spending all this time and energy and money on this. And so I de-risk the video and image efforts by only commissioning videos and infographics on content that has already proven itself to be a unicorn. And so by doing that, here's an example of a infographic I did with Brian Dean. He's like an SEO guru. Like this is a #2 story for search engine land for organic search. 11 amazing hacks that will boost your organic click-through rates. I knew this was going to do well because it's just a graphical version of one of my top 5 stories on my blog for that year. So that's kind of how I came to that idea. Webinars and conference presentations. This truly is like a cross-channel concept. So like when I had that blog article that went bonkers, like 100,000 views, I just told my team, guys, stop. Stop whatever you're doing. We're doing a webinar on this exact same topic. Don't even change the title. Keep the exact same title because that's what was working. Okay, so we sent out a webinar registration, didn't change the title or anything, and it generated 5,000 registrations. And the reason why it generated 5,000 was because there's a limit on GoToWebinar of 5,000 registrations. Like, like it breaks after 5,000. But who knows how great this could have been, but what's so funny is like once you get that kind of performance, you need to milk this thing for all it's worth. So what I told my team was like, oh my God, we got 5,000 registrations. This is amazing. Like our typical webinar does like 500. So this is interesting. Let's just do it again tomorrow. Okay. And they're like, what? You're going to do the same freaking webinar tomorrow? And they thought I was crazy. And I was like, nope, we're not changing anything. We're doing the same thing. You can unsubscribe the people who attended, but we're doing the same webinar tomorrow. And so they did it. And lo and behold, we got another 5,000 out of this effort. You see what I'm saying? And so we just kept milking this thing until it kind of petered itself out. So like the mistake people are making is they're not extracting enough winnings from their winning ideas, if that makes sense. Now, we actually did this webinar 5 times, okay? We just made slight changes to the title and added some additional content. But that one webinar, and it's for offspring baby unicorns, generated 71% of the registrations. What's so interesting about this strategy is not just that you're generating more registrations, it's also less work, right? Like I could audition a new idea. I could like spend a week creating a new deck on some other topic that's unproven, but it's likely, like 97% likely to become a donkey. So it's like, why would you do more work if it's like for less outcome when you can do less work for more outcomes? So that's kind of the thinking here. Another idea here is to boost your unicorns with social media ad spending, right? Because in advertising, if you have high click-through rates, the cost per click is very low. So this is just that article I just posted it, I'm getting like a relevancy score of 7 out of 10. And so that means like it's 1 penny per click. And this is like in a competitive market for like America, Canada, UK. Twitter's a little bit more expensive. It was getting a 6% click-through rate, which is pretty high. Typically it's like less than 1% click-through rate, and it's getting 6 cents per click for this webinar here. And so it's a little bit like that game Battleship. Like, you guys are definitely too young to remember this thing. You're trying to shoot down the other guy's battleship, but for some freaking reason you don't have like radar or GPS or guided missiles or drones or anything. You have no freaking idea where the damn boat is, so you're just lobbing shots everywhere, right? And then when you hear an impact, it's like, well, I know there's a battleship in that vicinity, so I'm going to focus all my firepower and effort in that vicinity. That's kind of what I'm talking about for the unicorn alert. And so what it tells me is that content marketing in 2018 is a bit of more of a numbers game than I think people want to admit. I think we want to believe we're the guru and that we have a pulse on what's going to go hot and what's not going to go hot. But guys, I think I'm pretty good at content marketing, but like my hit rate is like 3%. Okay, so yeah, I mean maybe you can get 4%, but it's not like you can do like 10 times better or anything like that. It's the difference is that when I hit the jackpot, I extract a lot of value from those winners, and then when I hit snake eyes or nothing, like a donkey, I quickly kind of move on and just like let them die quickly. Any thoughts or questions so far?
As a company or a person or a blogger that doesn't contribute to other blogs, how would they create the babies? Would they just create like different variations like webinars or
repurpose the content in different ways?
Yeah, just repurposing it in general ways.
You definitely need to get this out there. Like, there's like a blogging platform called Medium. Okay, it just syndicate the winning blog posts on Medium. Okay, there's like LinkedIn Pulse. Okay, like have the author syndicate the story on their LinkedIn Pulse channel. Or you could even summarize the article into 1,300 characters and just have it summarized as kind of like a post on social media, like one of those longer form status updates. Like, these are all like great ways to get additional mileage out of something that's already proven itself to be a winner. And that what you find is like that makes up for all the donkeys that went nowhere. Great question.
Yeah. That's a really good tip. Susan asked earlier as well. She said she's currently a WordStream and Quuu client. Woo! And she says in WordStream, specifically the AdWords part she's talking about, she's got some ads that have a great click-through and conversion rate, but she wants to know that should she eliminate ad groups and campaigns that don't perform as strongly? I answered that yes, you should, but I guess if you haven't got anything that's specifically standing out as being the unicorn in the pack, then it's hard to know, isn't it? You'll have ones that perform better, but they may all relatively be donkeys compared to that one if you haven't auditioned enough variations and found that unicorn, it's hard to know, isn't it?
Yeah, so the odds, so my unicorn hit rate is 3 out of 100, so 1 in 33. So you kind of need to audition 33 different ad concepts in order to just statistically have the probability of finding one of these things, and that's just I mean, you could be unlucky and have to audition 50 things until you find that one idea that really captivates the imagination of people. So I mean, usually if they're all more or less the same, what I do is I throw them all out and then I just come up with a new thing, right? Because one of the challenges is people are biased, so it would be like playing Battleship where they shoot the bullets like in the same vicinity all the time, like just shooting B4 over and over. What you need to do is like really be open to trying out some crazy kooky ideas, like H12 or something, instead of B2 all the time. So yeah, let's just move on here, talking about kind of putting this into more practical examples of this thing. And I wanted to talk to you a little about my favorite unicorn marketing hacks of 2018. So my top 5 unicorn marketing hacks. Number 5 is sort of the Russian ad targeting method. So hopefully I've convinced you by now that click-through rates matter like a lot for the success of your marketing projects across different channels. I think the Russians did a really, I mean, they're horrible stuff that they've done, but they found a really interesting loophole that actually generates unusually high click-through rates. And I want to explain to you how that works. I did an experiment just in October of this last year where I created a fake news website called Citizens News Networks. It's kind of a ridiculous website. It's like the backwards CNN logo. This is like a 2-minute WordPress effort. This is completely fake. I used a fake story, and basically I promoted my fake story to my fake Facebook page for this fake news network, targeting certain demographics and certain locations, and I just promoted the post, and like this thing went crazy. It went like bonkers. I've never seen engagement like this ever. Within 5 minutes, it got 2,000 clicks and 27 shares, all these comments. I had to kind of pause it because I was worried I would go spend all my money here. So I spent $50 on this thing. And the reason why this works so well, it's a psychological concept. It's called cognitive dissonance. So to the extent that I'm not suggesting you come up with fake news and use that for your company. That's awful. But to the extent that you can figure out, kind of get into the minds of your customers and your prospective customers and try to figure out what their biases are, and then come up with campaigns that sort of flatters their worldviews, that actually generates a tremendous amount of click-through rates and high engagement. I'll just give you one example of a story. It's a story about that has nothing to do with politics. The iPhone battery scandal, where they kind of slow your phone down like right before the new iPhone comes out. Like, people suspected that was the case for many years, and then they finally admitted it. You see what I'm saying? So that's like, oh my God, like if you're a journalist, like that's the story you go all in on for like a month, because because like people are going to be so mad about this, and they're going to all have an opinion.
I knew it.
Yeah. So those are, if you got to find those types of stories, and those are the ones that are going to do amazingly well. Any questions on this one?
No, it's all good.
The another one has to do, my background's in Facebook advertising, so a lot of these examples are coming from Facebook ads. But basically, there's this strategy that I employ called the inverted unicorn ad targeting method. Okay, so all these analogies are going to be unicorn analogies. Sorry. So normally in Facebook or in marketing in general, you try to cast kind of a narrow net. When you're promoting your stuff, you target people who visited your site, who have the certain demographics and interests and behaviors that align to your target buyer. So if we're selling email marketing software, well, then we would target people who like email marketing and have certain job titles. Like you want to cast a narrow net and maximize the engagement rates within that narrow net. The inverted unicorn ad targeting method says, it says to do the opposite. Let's go after people, like say we're selling this email marketing software. Let's go after people who have two completely unrelated interests. So people who like email marketing, but also who like Game of Thrones. So that if you look at the targeting set, it's like people who match like Daenerys Targaryen and the Tyrion Lannister fans, and all this stuff on the right there. So you might be thinking like, WTF, like why are you, what could possibly come out of this targeting set? And it actually, what happens is it's an unusual greatness. So what you can do is, because they have two dissimilar uncorrelated interests, okay, then you're actually creating an ad experience that's tugging at two of their interests rather than one. You see what I'm saying? So this is like, the mother of all email marketing solutions or something like this. And you know what? If you don't understand what this joke is all about, that's the beauty of this, because you would never see this ad. You see what I'm saying? It's only the super fans of Game of Thrones who happen to be marketing fans are going to do this. If you time this around, if you time it around like the season premiere or the season finale, like you'll end up with like a $1 CPM, which is like the typical CPM is like $30. So that's kind of another way of kind of gaming the system. Any questions about that one?
Yeah, but I've got some new ideas that I'm going to run with Matt later.
Yeah, this is gold. I love it.
Yeah, I love
Uh,
that.
my number three Facebook, my number three hack is a Facebook Messenger hack. And so what this is, it's I'm going to be a little self-promotional here. It's to not, like, it's so competitive in the news feed, but there's this way that you can connect directly with Facebook users without even having to bother with the news feed. It's through Facebook Messenger. So basically, you can make it so that people who message your page, and by the way, you can deploy this messaging technology. This is basically what my business does. You create this chatbot for Facebook Messenger, and you can deploy it to respond to inquiries from your Facebook page or from your website like this. This is not a person talking; it's a robot talking to a user. Okay, and what happens is that every time someone engages with your chatbot, you get their information, regardless of whether or not they gave it to you. So Facebook gives you their information. You see what I'm saying? And so the old way of doing Facebook was you were trying to get people to like your page so that they could see your content in their news feed. You see what I'm saying? That's no longer the case, because the news feed is just they're shutting down all the companies. But kind of a new game in town is like you just get people to respond to your bot, and then you have their credentials, like they've opted into getting messages from your business through Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
And then this is, instead of like a 5% open rate from email, it's like an 80% open rate through chat. And so I think this is kind of interesting. You should check that out. It's that's what my company does.
Definitely will, yeah.
Number two, we're almost done here. The Unicorn Slush Fund. So the Unicorn Slush Fund is just like kind of like if you're managing your content budgets. Like there's a lot of people use something called they use let me just move that. So there's monthly PPC marketing budgets where it's like, you have $1,000 a month to spend, use it or lose it. Okay. And so they'll be like, okay, well, we created 10 pieces of content this month. Let's evenly divide the budget, $100 per post, and promote them all. But hopefully you've learned here that 97% of these things are going to go nowhere. And then 3% of them are going to do really, really, really well. So what you really should do is like get rid of the monthly PPC budget and turn it into a slush fund. The slush fund just says like, we can add rollover. So you can wait for it. Like it would be like just wait and wait and wait and accumulate a pile of money. And then when you get the unicorn, move all in on it. As an analogy, do you guys play poker?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I play.
Wouldn't it be an awful betting strategy to go all in on every hand, like how or put $100 in on every hand, like that would be a ridiculous strategy. But that's exactly what marketers are doing here when they blast an email for every article that they produce. Like what you want to do is you want to wait a little bit until you have sort of an unbeatable hand, or at least something that you think has a little higher probabilities, and then play that hand to extract maximum value, rather as opposed to just going for the blinds. So my last hack has to do with a unicorn brand hack for doubling or tripling click-through rates. And this is a branding hack. So the click-through rates vary dramatically based on whether or not people have brand affinity with you and your company. So if they've heard of you before, so that if they're repeat visitors, then they have much higher brand affinity, versus if they're a new visitor, then they have much lower brand affinity. And so basically what we've observed is that the click-through rates for people who've heard of you before and who've visited your site before is 2 to 3 times higher, so 200 to 300% higher, which is a meaningful difference. Not only that, they are 2 to 3 times more likely to convert to a sale or a purchase if they've heard of you before and visited your site before. So the hack here is that we just need to get more people familiar with our brand, in a scalable way. And so what I do personally is I create and promote content outside of my niche. So like I sell AdWords stuff and I sell chatbots, but in order to really get those conversion rates and click-through rates like 300% higher. I produce content that's outside of my niche to connect with these people earlier, so that when the need arises to buy chatbots, they'll be like, they'll see my listing and they'll pick me because they've heard of me. So so how do I do this? I did some audience analytics on, like, who are my customers and what are their interests other than chatbots, other than AdWords. And what I found was, like, by looking at like User Explorer in Google Analytics, and looking at the Audience Manager in Facebook, and the insights in Twitter Manager, like, what I found was, like, they're all interested in entrepreneurship. Okay, so 70% of my audience is really, really interested in entrepreneurship. And so what I do to connect with people earlier in the funnel, I spend about 20% of my efforts on creating and promoting off-topic content, like, the ugly truth of being an entrepreneur, this kind of personal stories about entrepreneurship, and that resonates with the people who are, meet the demographic requirements of my target audience, but haven't yet moved into market to want to buy that immediately. And so I think that's an incredibly powerful way to kind of make the odds in your favor, like, because the way the marketing works is you want to create and promote an inspirational message to your audience, so that they become biased towards you, so that later when the need arises, they're going to just choose you over everyone else. So guys, those are my 5 hacks for today: the Russian method, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just wrap this up here before going to questions. What does it all mean? We've gone on an epic journey today from Donkey Land to Unicorn Land. So congratulations, everyone. It was a 5-step process. Step 5, optimize for engagement, like high click-through rates, because of those are going to do well in Google, Facebook, etc. Audition a lot of different ideas. Find the unicorns. Eliminate the donkeys, stop wasting time on them, and find the few winning campaigns that you have, or the best ones amongst the campaigns that you have. Go nuts with those, repurpose them, across channels, across platforms, et cetera, et cetera. That's, we're trying to extract the most possible winnings out of our unicorns. One of the interesting things about this strategy is it actually has a flywheel. So, like, the first time you successfully execute a unicorn alert, the first time you execute that, you're going to generate a tremendous amount of brand affinity for you and your company. You see what I'm saying? But now that you've created this brand affinity for you and your company, the next time it'll be easier to get the click-through rates to achieve greatness. And so it just around and around you go. What you find, like, it used to be that when I was starting this out, I would have one successful unicorn alert every year, then it would be one every quarter. Now it's like once or twice a month I can find one of these unicorns. It's not that I've gotten any better than finding it, it's just that people are more responsive to kind of what I call upper class donkeys, if you will. Like, there's these ones where it's on the threshold where it's not that interesting, but they still do really well because I have affinity. You see what I'm saying? So that's basically the whole story, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts or any questions.
I had one just when you were talking about almost like at the top of the funnel, getting that brand affinity straight from a different niche or niche, whatever you want to call it. How do you track that person from, like, seeing that entrepreneurship article to then remarketing to them? Like, because it's on Medium.
It's in aggregate. It's not like I'm just connecting the dots here in aggregate. Like, I know that 70% of my customers have this interest, and there's a lot more of these people than, who are in market for chatbots or for AdWords. So it's just, and that realization that if they've heard of you before, that they convert and click like crazy, So it's not a direct attribution. It was more kind of an aggregate strategy.
I really do like that idea. It's given me it's got the cogs ticking away in my brain of lots of things that we can do for Quuu. So I'm looking forward to jumping on a call with Dan tomorrow to discuss that, using LinkedIn Pulse and Medium to put out those sort of original blogs that are slightly off topic, but they're sort of hitting the right people that we need to be targeting, just to get them more used to being exposed to our brand and trusting it. So that's cool.
I mean, the key here is balance. Like, I know people who go all in on a niche and they never, they never get out of that niche, and that's not going to work. But I know
Yeah.
people who are a little too all over the place, that it's like, what do you guys do? So it's kind of like 20% of your efforts and energy and budget, I think, should be casting a wider net, and still don't abandon your niche, but don't be kind of a prisoner to it either.
Sure.
Yeah, I like it. I'm definitely going to keep. Sorry, yeah, I'm definitely going to keep on using all these analogies.
Yeah.
Makes it much more fun as well. I love it.
One of just on those analogies, like it's cross-channel. So like, in order to successfully execute, you actually need like your webinar manager on board, and you need your Facebook advertiser on board, and you need like your your, I don't know, your social media guy, you're saying, like, so each channel manager in an organization needs to know what's sort of the range of outcomes. Like, I like, if it's like the email marketer in an organization, they must need to know that sort of the average campaign is around 10%. But if we get something that's like 50% open rate, well, then I should call Unicorn Alert and alert the other channel managers to having this idea that seems to be resonating here, which it follows should do well in other channels. And so to your point about using the nomenclature of like donkeys and unicorns and Unicorn Alert and unicorn babies, it actually facilitates collaboration across the channels by having a shared vernacular for what the heck we're doing. And like, I kid you not, like when I onboard my marketers, we talk about unicorns and unicorn babies, and you think this is the craziest meeting.
From an outsider's perspective, it looks absolutely mental, but there's actually a lot of sense behind it, and I very quickly got to see that. If you just look at the slides without your explanation, you think, wow, this is going to be interesting, but I'm not quite sure where this is going. And as soon as you start to explain it, you're like, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and you start to take it all very seriously. Like, yeah, okay, the unicorn quotient here is this, and it's brilliant. But I've got a question here from Victoria when we were talking about Facebook, and she said, what about the new Facebook algorithm which punishes posts with external links? What's the best way to deal with that? What's your thoughts?
So the old way of doing social media is pretty much dead. So like, I think what the old way of doing it was, you'd have kind of your website, which was a blog or something like this, and you would post kind of this thing called link posts, where you would just kind of have a status update that links back to your blog. So I mean, when I have 20,000 fans on Facebook for my personal page, and if I do a link post, it'll get to about 100 people. So that's a joke. So that's like one. Is that even 1%? It's 0.5%. So what I think a new strategy would be is to actually summarize the content with no links. Just include the infographic or the image or the content. Just summarize the content as kind of a long form status update, but also invert the angle. So typically blog posts, we're trying to make a point or something like this. Invert the angle so that you're asking a question instead. It's like, instead of saying like, click-through rates are the, you better focus on these things, you dummies. Okay, like that's kind of like a typical blog post. You turn that around, you say like, what are some ways that you're, creative ways that you're raising your click-through rates, or you switch it. So A, you turn it into a long-form status updates, but B, you have to also invert the angle to be more conversational, because the algorithm still shows a little bit of it shows a little bit of organic reach. Like you can still get lucky. Like I had one status post last month that got 1 million views. Okay, and you know what the status update was? It was like RIP Facebook news feed. Okay. And everyone had an opinion on this. You see what I'm saying? So like, Facebook has become less about like, it used to be that you would get participation points for just posting stuff. That's not the case anymore. Now it's like playing the lottery. Like you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of winning, but if you win, it's like you win a lot. So it's just yeah.
What about posting in the comments, like a link in the comments? Would that be?
I think that I think it still works, but it just seems to me like a very vulnerable strategy because, like, I think the cat's out of the bag on that one. So if it works, great, but I don't expect it to work. Steady state. Cool. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys do or anything else, or any special offers or anything?
Yeah, we can talk about our upcoming launch on the 5th of March. We're going to launch on Product Hunt. Quuu is launching its own scheduler and content recycling tool, which is going to facilitate all the content we provide really well. But it's all going to be included with the existing pricing, so we're really excited about this launch. Although reading the new Twitter policy yesterday has thrown up some spanners in the works, so we're going to have to make some changes before we do launch, but yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's like it's social scheduling stuff. Is that what this is?
Yeah, so Quuu started off as what currently is just content. So we just help people find content to post on social media, which hopefully provides some engagement for them. And currently we integrate with HubSpot and Buffer and use their scheduling tools to schedule out that content for them. Now we're building our own.
So it's like curation, like that.
Yeah, it's automated curation. Yeah.
So like that's a really important area going forward, curation, because it's like a couple of reasons. Number one, when you're doing this unicorn stuff, it's like you can just randomly like find one by accident. But the other thing you can do is you can look at what other people have done, and if like just through content curation, if you notice like someone else has like this really hot article, like that story I told you that got 1 million updates on the 1 million views on the Facebook newsfeed. The only reason why I posted that story was because I saw that it was doing really hot on some other guy's feed. You know what I mean? So like I actually have a full-time content curator who's just, their job is just to look for like, unicorns. And just that. So rather than me originating the content, like because you're just shooting these bullets everywhere, like I can at least take a more educated guess by having a curator, or they employ software tools to kind of surface the stuff with lots of comments. That's what we're looking for, stuff with lots of comments. So maybe if you, to the extent that you can work that into your software, I think that would be like, pretty valuable.
Well, that's definitely something that we've employed ourselves, using like BuzzSumo and seeing like what's been performing well, and sort of taking that, or at least taking like the structure of a title and maybe putting it into a different context. That can really help. But what you were saying about people being sort of 2 or 3 times more likely to click through our existing users really corresponds to what we do with Quuu. So if you've got, so basically the people that promote their content through Quuu Promote and then it gets shared with Quuu, is way more likely to be clicked because it's being shared by people that they follow, that they've chosen to follow. It's not an ad that's appeared in front of a random person. It's an article being shared by someone they trust, that they follow. And so the idea is that everyone in their own right has some form of influence. They might not be Kim Kardashian level influencer, but they have a level of influence. And so this was what we really felt was unique about Quuu, is that we could provide a really reliable, unique way of organically promoting these people's content via people who are genuinely interested in it to their followers, who obviously they have a more of a connection with. So that same concept applies with what we do with Quuu. So I thought that was quite interesting to see that what you were saying about it being 2 to 3 times more likely that they'll click through.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, yeah, that's I mean, you tend to buy and click on things from the people and brands you've heard of. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we're almost like basically tagging on to that person's brand affinity by sharing the content through them. Yeah.
Got it. So is this like is there like an influencer marketing play? Like, can I, pay to have people update their feeds with my chatbot stuff or something like that? Like, is that in the works, or?
You can definitely use it to promote general content that's not sales focused. Yes, but if it's like totally like buy our Mobile Monkey bot, then we would
buy the damn thing, you.
That doesn't work, but
yeah.
Well, yeah, that never works.
That was really good, Larry. Thank you so much for that. That's definitely the most interesting presentation webinar that I've ever been on, let alone participated on. So thank you.
What?
Honestly,
it's really good. It's fantastic. I mean, there's some real gold dust in there that we're going to take away, and there's a lot of good feedback in the comments too. So I'm glad to see that everyone enjoyed it.
Awesome, guys. Well, just are you gonna do something with the recording at all? Like
yeah, we can put it on our blog. We can email everybody and share it around. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Okay. Well, guys, have a great day, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks.